Hello everyone, Karnasa here, and welcome back to Kerbal Gets Real, the 1955 edition. That's right, we're coming to you from 1955, straight after our rather successful 1954, where we finally managed to achieve that all-important milestone. We managed to achieve orbit around the planet Earth, and boy, we were very happy with it. And here we are in the Space Center, 1st of January 1955, and we have another Prometheus series rocket to build and launch. We have this to build because, well, Prometheus 3 was supposed to be the first rocket to achieve a polar orbit, and unfortunately, it failed at the last stage. So we've basically got a carbon copy of it, and hopefully this time it'll work. Here we are on the launch pad, 16th of January, 1955, with Prometheus 4, and now that thing had, well, a little bit of a mind of its own. It wanted to go off to the west, do a little bit of a wobble, and the reason why that is the avionics unit that I have in this rocket series only allows control up to 45 tons. These rockets have a mass of about 49, so for the first maybe like 5 to 10 seconds, I don't actually have any control over these rockets at all. So yeah, they can kind of go wherever they want, which obviously this one did. It went towards the vehicle assembly building, but not to worry. That first stage was a complete success, and we had our second stage ignite, thankfully, because that thing is always risky. It has by far the highest ignition failure rate out of any engine that I'm using currently. But it all worked. I cut out the coast stage because I thought we've seen this launch. Well, this is the 4th version of this launch that we've seen now, so we don't really need to see that anymore. And there we go. We achieved orbit. Now, Prometheus 4 didn't quite achieve all that we set it out to do, but one thing that it did achieve was it got us enough science to go into research and development and pick up a new little tech node, which is really exciting. So we can go and pick up 1958 orbital rocketry, which, well, yeah, that unlocks us the upgrades to the LR-89 and the LR-105, which is really, really, really going to be good, and we are going to make a lot of use out of those engines. But before we can do that, we need to go back into the vehicle assembly building because Prometheus 5 needs a little bit of a touch-up. That's right. Because we didn't achieve the contract for atmospheric analysis, we are going to basically edit this so it has the best chance possible for completing that contract. So what I have done, I removed the navigational satellite payload from this because we finished that one, so currently it is just dead weight. We've also added a magnetometer boom onto it to get all of that important science, and we're going to change the 4 to a 5 because this is 5 and not 4. Now, I did notice that once we finished 5, we are going to have nothing in our build queue. So, one thing that you really want to be doing with RP1 is to have something in your build queue at all times, because obviously things take time to make. So, once again, we're going to go back into the vehicle assembly building, and we are going to work on the next generation of satellites that we are going to be using. This will be Pyra Mark II. Well, yes, the second iteration of Pyra. Pyra being suggested in the comment section last episode. Thank you for that. I think it is a very fitting name, as the rockets that are launching these are obviously called Prometheus. So, yes, thank you for that name. But basically, rather than using the Sputnik core, what I have done here is I have got I've made a square using procedural avionics. I have attached solar panels to every single side. That way, hopefully, at least one side will be exposed to the sun, so we should be getting a little bit of power back with that. Going into the Kerbalism screen now, the Kerbalism science screen, and we are going to put, 4 different experiments onto this rocket, and the ones that I have gone with are the ones that are quite fiddly and a little bit larger, such as the magnetometer. That thing is ridiculously large for satellites of this size, and it's just nice to fit it in there. We've also got the micrometeorite detector, we've got a Geiger counter in there, and we have an early television camera in there as well. So yeah, all of the ones that don't kind of fit nicely and you don't want to clone them, you don't want to have them symmetrically around the rocket, nope, they are all in there, and well, it's just a nice and handy and convenient way of getting as much science as possible, but that's basically the upgraded version of the Pyra. And this thing, it definitely is an upgrade. It's lighter, it carries more science, it's got solar panels so it can generate its own power, but not indefinitely. This thing may run out of power if its exposure to the sun is not ideal. But that's basically it for this rocket. It is exactly the same as every other Prometheus rocket that we have been launching so far. Just really the upper stage, the satellite that we actually launch into orbit is the only thing that's different. Obviously, we are going to paint on a 6 and a 7 as well, just to, keep up with the correct number on the sides of these things. But yeah, not really much else to say about this rocket, except, yeah, that's it. It's barely different, and it took an awful long time to actually finish this and build it up, because that was rather fiddly messing around with that satellite. Procedural avionics are an absolute blessing, but at the same time, it can be quite, annoying to get them exactly how you want, but that's it, we're out of the vehicle assembly building. I feel like we have spent far too long in there. This episode has been mostly vehicle assembly building. So, we're on the launch, Prometheus 5, 29th of March, 1955. And you may have noticed at the start of that launch, we had an ignition failure on our LR-89 engine, which is in the LR-43 configuration, yep. And I think that may have been, it may have been a little bit of foreshadowing, because this flight was not meant to be. This did not work. It did not work at all. That second stage, that fateful second stage, that cursed second stage, which has the highest ignition failure out of any engine that I'm currently using, it didn't go off. But I thought, this thing has a magnetometer on it, so we might as well try and get it into at least a little bit of space. That way we can start gaining some new science from the magnetometer. However, in hindsight, that thing takes 30 days to get just 6 science. So the 5 or so minutes that this thing will be in space, maybe a little bit longer, it's not really gonna do much, is it? So I probably should have just blown this up and called it a day, but no, I thought, let's just watch it burn up through the atmosphere once again, and we will see it splashing down into the Atlantic Ocean. A lot of my rockets seem to be doing that at the moment. Well, that was a bit of a bummer, if I'm going to be honest. It was a little bit of an upsetting situation, but oh well, we have another couple of rockets that we are currently working on, which hopefully will achieve what Prometheus 5 was unable to do. That's the thing, with this early rocketry, yes, you are going to fail an awful lot of the time because those ignition failures just are so high. So here we are, launch 3 of 1955, the Prometheus 6 on the 15th of June, and this rocket has already gone off to a little bit of a funny start. I have placed some cameras on the payload fairing of this thing, and I thought, to get a nice shot of the launch, you know what, I'll activate that camera and we can watch the launch from here. However, I was unable to actually get out of this camera mode because I think, I hit disable on it, and I don't know why, but it just wouldn't let me come out of this camera mode. But there we go, first stage separation and the second stage fired, which is really nice because, a lot of the time, that second stage doesn't actually work. But, yeah, stuck in this view means that I can't actually see what happens to the rocket once the payload fairing is deployed, like here. But it is a very nice view. So what I had to do is I had to go to the tracking center and actually come back into this rocket to fix the camera. And for some reason, that messed up all of my staging. I did not mean to fire that stage there at all. That was really, really, really annoying. It wasn't even the next thing on the staging list. So I don't know why that happened. I was trying to activate the RCS. So yeah, I did a little bit of a bit of an exploit. When you return to a vehicle, it settles down the fuel, but obviously the fuel kind of unsettles very quickly. So what I did was I came into this rocket and I activated that stage and set it up to full throttle as soon as possible, which got us into a kind of semi-orbit. You may notice there the periapse height is only 125,000 meters, which is not quite 140,000 meters of orbit, and it's also nowhere near enough to achieve that atmospheric analysis contract that we still have, and we are fast running out of time to actually achieve that contract. And it's getting a little bit silly now, because this thing should have worked. It should have worked perfectly, but due to, well, me trying to make things look cool, it kind of failed. But once again, back to the Space Center, getting ready to launch Prometheus 7. But you know what we just did? We just unlocked 1958 orbital rocketry, and we also gained enough science to pick up a new node. And what we're going to do, we're going to go for entry, descent, and landing. Yes, that's right, we are finally going to be able to return things that we have sent to space. But obviously, that's going to take a little bit of time to actually research, so we can crack on and build our first purpose-built launch vehicle, because we unlocked 1958 orbital rocketry, and one thing that I like about these launch vehicles is that I can use MechJeb to do the entire launch. Now, I like launching things, and I can do it. I can launch things, and I've done it many times in this game, which is why I have an absolute love for MechJeb and the Ascent guidance, because it does it all for you. And, well, if I'm honest, it probably can do it a hell of a lot better than I can, because I can do it, but it's not going to be as good. The primer vector guidance mode that MechJeb has for RSS, as long as you've got that set to emit coast and you kind of know roughly what you're doing with it, it will work like 100% of the time, and it will get you a orbit that is very good with zero eccentricity, which is very nice. Now, I have managed to do that myself without using MechJeb, but 9 times out of 10 I won't get it as well as perfectly as MechJeb can. So this honestly is a very welcome addition to basically this series. From now on, I can use MechJeb to do my launches. And another thing that using MechJeb allows me to do as well is actually take a few better camera shots of these launches, because I no longer have to worry about staging and turning over and pitching over and all of that kind of rocketry stuff that gets in the way of taking some really nice camera shots. No, I can leave MechJeb to do what it does, and then I can focus on getting some of those really nice screens. Because before these kind of launches, what I was doing to get these cinematic shots is I was actually taking those in crash when I was testing out the rockets, because I didn't want to do that when I was using the actual rocket in case something went wrong. And I wanted these to succeed. I wanted to give it basically my full attention, which is why, yes, some of the cinematic shots, well, especially the ones at the beginning of the episode, they have all been done in crash, because if it goes wrong in crash, I can just reset the simulation. I did say last episode, I am not allowing reverting flights or quick saves or anything like that. So yeah, if something goes wrong due to a funky camera angle, that would be really annoying. Which actually, funny thing I say that, because that's exactly what happened earlier this episode. I obviously looked at the launch from that camera in the payload fairing, and yeah, it went wrong. It went really wrong, and that rocket would have gone perfectly if I wouldn't have done that. So that's why, yeah, I spent most of those cinematic shots in crash. I just thought, oh, it's the first time that I've done this, I'll do it like this, because, yeah, it'll be something cool to look at. But here we are, still working away on this rocket. We're just getting those tail fins at the bottom now to provide that all-important aerodynamic stability. And, of course, a little bit of a paint job. I actually really like how this thing looks. It does look an awful lot like a Delta Heavy, though, like I think I have mentioned already. If not, yeah, no, this thing was not meant to look like a Delta Heavy. It's kind of like a cross between an Atlas and a Delta Heavy in the fact that it looks like a Delta Heavy, but it uses the Atlas configuration of rockets, those LR-89s and the LR-105. But there we go. Launch clamps all on, getting those solid rocket motors on the side there so that when we have booster separation, they don't crash into the core stage, because, well, we really wouldn't want that to happen, because then there would be a rather large explosion and it would look very cool and awesome, but unfortunately it would ruin the entire rocket. Now, this thing took, well, quite a lot of money to tool, but not to worry, because hopefully we will be getting a lot of use out of this thing. And I decided to name this Hercules. Now, I've done a bit of a mistake there, because I did mention that I was going to be naming launch vehicles after, say, Greek gods and all those kind of things, because the planets are named after Roman gods, so I thought I'd go down the Greek route. Hercules is Roman, Heracles is the Greek equivalent, and I didn't really think about that at the time, and it was a little bit of a mistake. But obviously, this thing is called Hercules. It is going to go through probably more than 12 labors, and it is going to be the basis of all of my rocket series for at least the foreseeable future when we're at this stage of the space program. Its labors obviously are going to be to launch us to great new heights that we have not really achieved before. And now what I'm doing is I'm actually getting the satellite that these things are going to be launching, and there we go. We can see it's still got enough Delta V to launch one of these. Obviously, those satellites do not weigh an awful lot. I think they weigh considerably less than half a ton, and this thing is, well, rated to go up to about half a ton. There it is. Tooling purchased. It only costs 36,000, which isn't all that bad, although if you look, we are running out of money rather quickly, so we do need to start fulfilling contracts, hopefully within the next launch, the final launch of the Prometheus series, I might add, Prometheus 7. Hopefully, we can finally achieve that atmospheric analysis contract that we have had since, well, the start of this episode. That would be very, very nice indeed, because it will give us some much needed money. Not an awful amount of money, but it will be enough to tide us over for a little bit. Now, this thing is going to go for a sun-synchronous orbit. That's the aim. I have picked up the contract for that. And these stages that we've got going at the moment, the 2 LR-89 booster stages and the core LR-105 stage, is not quite enough to achieve the orbit that we require for a sun-synchronous orbit, especially as we need a periapse of 300 kilometers. No, this thing does not have enough Delta V, even with that tiny little satellite. We need a little bit more. So, what I have done is I have included an upper stage as well, which is going to use the AJ1042. This thing, yeah, with this addition, it can do it. It can make it. However, I was a little bit apprehensive of using this engine, because this engine has, once again, a very, very, very high chance of failure upon ignition, and that obviously will go down the more we use it, and I think we are going to end up using this engine quite a little bit, at least until we unlock the middle series of the AJ10. Yeah, that's what I was looking for, because they are rather useful engines, especially they are hypergolic, so yeah, we can keep them around in space forever if we really want to, and we will still have that fuel to burn. Obviously, the stages of this rocket, the first couple of stages, are using RP1, so kerosene and liquid oxygen, which does boil off. Liquid oxygen, obviously, being the ingredient that boils off there, because, well, we need to keep it cold, and we have not unlocked cryogenic tanks yet. But here I am, just making sure the staging is all correct, adding a few separation motors just so that once we fire up that last stage, we can get that the hell away from the actual core stage. And that's it. That is the Hercules rocket, well, the Hercules series of rockets initiated, going to be launching the Pyrrha 3. And luckily, we will see that in this episode, because we can build one of these. There we go. It looks like it's only going to take us 90 days. And, well, yeah, we've only got Prometheus 7 left to build, and then we're going to start working on these guys, which, as I've said at the start of this, I am very, very, very excited for that, because it's going to take a lot of stress off of launches. Obviously, we're still going to suffer the wrath of test light in some situations, because these engines still aren't particularly reliable. So here we have Prometheus 7, the last launch of the Prometheus series on the 30th of August, 1955. And we have seen these so many times. Obviously, this is the 7th iteration of this rocket. We have launched this rocket 6 times before. There's not really an awful lot left to say about them. This first stage, obviously, it's working rather well. Our pitch profile is looking pretty good. We have second stage ignition and it actually fires, so yeah, that's about it, and this thing fires all the way to completion. So what else? What else to talk about this rocket? What else to talk about in general? It's very hot at the moment. It's very hot in my office where I'm doing this voiceover, and it's probably going to my head a little bit, but there we go. After the quick cut of the coast stage, here we have the final stage, and this will be the first iteration of these new satellites that I have developed that has made an actual orbit. And you can see, there we go, the atmospheric analysis satellite, that has gone green. That is the best looking color of green I have ever seen. I have tried, well, Prometheus 4, which is the first rocket that we launched this episode, was originally intended to complete this contract. So it's taken us up to Prometheus 7 to actually achieve that. But at least we've finally done it, and we can forget about that, and we can forget about Prometheus. But now, after a little bit of debris collecting on the launch pad, we're going to go into mission control. We're going to pick up the weather satellite contract, because that's something else that will gain us a little bit of money. And it has. We've gone up to 75,000 funds, which is not an awful lot, but we're getting somewhere. And yeah, now all we have to do is wait for Pyra 3. Which will be our first autopilot-enabled rocket, I guess you could say. It's got some kind of clever artificial intelligence inside to enable it to launch on its own. But we warp to morning, and here we are on the morning of the 3rd of December, 1955. We have the Hercules launch vehicle being tested for the first time with a Pyra 3 satellite. And now, I did say at the end of last episode that December is a cursed month, and well, I thought, you know what? We had this rocket sat around, we might as well launch it, and look at it go. Those 3 engines burning in unison to really propel that first stage. Very, very, very reminiscent of an Atlas. And there it is, a lovely little flyby of that thing as it heads up towards space, where hopefully Pyra 3 will orbit in a sun-synchronous orbit, because that's exactly what this thing is built to do. It should. In tests it came back being completely successful, so it should do that, but it won't do that because obviously TestLight hates the month December. Oh, damn, yeah, seriously, it's not even funny anymore. The last 3 episodes of this that I have done, the last launches have been a failure. It's really, really quite annoying. I said it last episode, I'll say it again. December is not my month. December is not the month for Carnasa Space Agency. But here we go. We're on the 1st of January, 1956. And 1956 will be a year indeed, because, well, we will unlock entry, descent, and landing, which will be very nice. We can do all kinds of things with that. But just before I finish this episode, this is something that I actually started building when I built up the Hercules series of rocket. I was in the vehicle assembly building for an awful long time. This episode, just in general, took a really, really long time to film. I think I had around 7 or so hours of footage to condense down. It kind of, yeah, this episode wasn't brilliant. It's just a lot of nothing kind of happened, and it's been difficult to find things to talk about. But anyway, this here, I thought I would show it because this will be featured in the next episode, and I don't want to kind of throw things into the wrong order. Basically, I have designed a little capsule that will last over a day, and then we can return it. It's got a little bit of RCS on it. It's got those Separatrons, separation motors. Separatrons? I don't know what. Yeah, it's got those separation motors that are basically going to give it a little bit of a kick so we can return it back to Earth. Obviously, I couldn't finish this yet, which is why I didn't actually show me building the entire thing, because I haven't unlocked heat shields. But I thought I might as well start the construction of this thing, because it was just, I was in the vehicle assembly building, and honestly, it was just something that popped into my mind, and I thought, yeah, let's do that. Let's make sure that we've got something. So we will be seeing this with a heat shield strapped onto it next episode, and I think, well, we unlock entry, descent, and landing quite early on. It's definitely going to be researched before our next launch, so we will have that to look forward to at the start of next episode, I am sure. But yeah, that's all there really is to talk about this, so I guess it's just generic outro time. If you have enjoyed this episode, why not go and give it a like? If you have really enjoyed this episode and would like to keep up with the content on my channel, please do consider subscribing as well. But I have been Carnasa, and I will see you later.